Summer, 1995. It was a time of dial-up internet, baggy jeans, and mixtapes. For the parents of a dozen children, it was supposed to be a summer of freedom, a summer of growth. A summer where their kids would make lifelong memories at the idyllic Camp Whispering Pines, nestled deep in the sprawling forests of Northern California. Camp Whispering Pines was the stuff of dreams. Owned and operated by the charismatic and beloved couple, Mark and Eleanor Vance, it promised canoeing, archery, arts and crafts, and legendary campfire stories under a blanket of stars. It was a sanctuary, a safe haven. For these 12 children, it was the adventure of a lifetime. They were the future doctors, artists, and adventurers of the world. But they would never get the chance to become any of those things. Because in the final week of August 1995, during the camp's annual end-of-summer festival, all 12 of them, along with 2 junior counselors, vanished without a trace. No witnesses, no ransom note, no bodies. It was as if the forest itself had swallowed them whole. The case of the Whispering Pines 12 would become one of the most baffling and heartbreaking mysteries in American history. A wound on the soul of a community that refused to heal. For 29 years there was only silence. Until now. The alarm was raised on the morning of August 28, 1995. It was pickup day. Parents began arriving at the camp's main gate, excited to hear stories of their children's adventures. But they were met not with laughter, but with a chilling, unnatural quiet. The camp owners, the Vances, were in a state of shock. They claimed the 12 children and 2 teenage counselors, 17-year-olds named Jessica and Kevin, had disappeared from their cabin overnight. Cabin 7, the senior-most cabin, sat slightly apart from the others, near the edge of the woods. The initial investigation, led by a determined detective Frank Miller, was a whirlwind of confusion. There were no signs of a struggle. The beds were made. A few bags were even packed for the trip home. It was tidy, too tidy. The only thing out of place was a single word, scrawled in what looked like mud on the inside of the cabin door. Soon. The search was massive. Helicopters with thermal cameras, hundreds of volunteers, K9 units. They scoured every inch of the dense forest, the nearby caves, the deep, cold lake. They found nothing. Not a footprint, not a shred of clothing, not a single clue as to where 14 people could have gone.
It was a ghost hunt. In all my years, I've never seen anything like it. You can't have 14 people just evaporate. But they did. We interviewed everyone. The Vances, the other campers who had left the day before, the delivery guy who brought the food. Every lead was a dead end. It was infuriating. It was haunting.
The camp owners, Mark and Eleanor Vance, were questioned extensively, but with no evidence, they were eventually cleared. Public suspicion, however, lingered for years. They closed Camp Whispering Pines a year later, unable to bear the weight of the tragedy. The mystery of the Whispering Pines 12 went cold, buried under years of silence and unanswered questions. Time is a relentless force. For the world, 29 years is an entire generation. But for the families of the missing, it was a single, unending moment of grief. Birthdays passed without celebration. Holidays were hollow. An empty seat at the dinner table became a permanent fixture. Detective Frank Miller retired, but the case never retired from him. It became his white whale, the one ghost he could never put to rest. The community of Oakhaven, once a cheerful mountain town, became known for its tragedy. The story of the vanished children became a local legend, a ghost story whispered to scare teenagers, its terrifying reality slowly fading into folklore. The camp itself was left to decay, a monument to a forgotten summer. No one dared to buy the land. It was considered cursed, haunted by the memory of what was lost. It seemed the truth of what happened that night in 1995 was destined to be reclaimed by the forest forever. Spring, 2024, nearly 3 decades after the vanishing. A young woman named Chloe arrives in Oakhaven. Chloe is the niece of Sarah Jenkins, one of the missing children. Her mother, Sarah's older sister, had recently passed away, and Chloe was fulfilling her mother's final wish, to leave a flower at the site where her little sister was last seen. A final act of remembrance. Armed with a small bouquet of lily and a heavy heart, Chloe made her way through the skeletal remains of the camp. She found the memorial and placed the flowers. But something compelled her to go further. She found the old camp map, faded but still legible, and located the ruins of Cabin 7. It was a dangerous, decrepit shell. But she felt a pull she couldn't explain. Inside, the air was thick with dust and decay. As she stepped carefully across the rotting floorboards, her foot snagged on a loose plank near the back wall. Annoyed, she knelt to push it back into place. That's when she saw it. Beneath the floorboard wasn't dirt, but a small, dark cavity. And nestled inside that cavity, wrapped in an old oilcloth bag, was a book. Sarah Jenkins. Her aunt stated that it was a diary. A voice from the silence. A voice that had been waiting 29 years to tell its story.
August 1st, 1995. Camp is amazing. My bunkmate is Maria, and she's hilarious. We've already planned to sneak out and look for the Whispering Pines ghost Mr. Vance told us about. He says it's just a story, but his eyes looked weird when he said it.
The first entries were exactly what you'd expect. Stories of swimming, friendships, and a crush on the handsome junior counselor, Kevin. But as the pages turned, a subtle dark thread began to weave itself into the narrative.
August 12th, 1995. There's a new counselor. He just showed up a few days ago. Mr. Vance introduced him as Mr. Silas. He's not like the others. He's really charming and all the kids love him. But sometimes I see him just watching the woods, like he's waiting for something. He told us the camp ghost story isn't real, but that there's something much older in these woods. Something that chooses people.
The diary mentions Mr. Silas more and more. He started a special club for the older kids in Cabin 7, the Starlight Pioneers. He taught them about constellations, but also about strange local folklore that not even the Vances seemed to know. Stories of an ancient entity in the forest that granted ascension to those who were worthy.
August 20th, 1995. The Starlight Pioneers had a meeting tonight. Mr. Silas says the camp is a thin place, where the world we know and the other side are close. He says the end of summer festival is special this year. It's not just a party. He calls it the final ceremony. He said we, the kids in Cabin 7, have been chosen. Ben thinks it's cool, like a secret society, but I'm scared. He made us promise not to tell anyone, not even the van.
A cold dread washed over Chloe as she read. This wasn't a story of an abduction from the outside. The danger had been inside the camp all along. The final pages of the diary were written on the night of August 27th, the night they vanished. The handwriting was shaky, stained with what looked like tears.
August 27th, midnight. I'm hiding under my bed. Something is wrong. So wrong. The festival ended hours ago. Mr. Vance and Eleanor went to their cabin. Then Mr. Silas came for us. He said it was time for the final ceremony. He took us from Cabin 7, out past the lake, to the old hunting cabin that's supposed to be.
The diary described a horrifying scene. Mr. Silas wasn't alone. There were other adults there, dressed in dark robes, their faces hidden. They weren't from the camp. He wasn't a camp counselor. He was the leader of a cult.
They called it the passage. They said we weren't going home. We were graduating. Jessica and Kevin, the counselors, they tried to stop him. They argued. 2 of the robed men took them away. They didn't come back. Ben started to cry, and Mr. Silas just smiled. He told us not to be afraid. He said we would be unburdened from our lives and join the eternal family. He said our parents would understand soon.
Sarah described how she feigned a stomach ache, and in the confusion, managed to slip away and run back to the empty Cabin 7, scrambling to hide her diary before they found her.
I can hear them coming back. They know I'm gone. The cabin door just creaked open. It's him. It's Mr. Silas. He's not smiling anymore. He says I was the most special of all. He says it's time to complete the ceremony. He says we're all going on a long, long trip to a place where no one can ever find us. He said they'll be waiting for us. He said.
The entry stops. The rest of the page is blank. Sarah's diary was a bombshell. It blew the 29-year-old cold case wide open. The first person the police contacted was a now 78-year-old Frank Miller.
For 29 years, I thought it was a kidnapping for ransom that went wrong. Or a monster. But the monster was human. He was invited in. He wore a friendly face.
With the new information, the investigation moved with lightning speed. There was no record of a Mr. Silas ever working at Camp Whispering Pines. The Vances, now in their late 80s and in a nursing home, confirmed they hired a last-minute replacement counselor who came with glowing but ultimately forged recommendations. He used a fake name, but the diary gave them a real name. In an earlier entry, Sarah had mentioned Mr. Silas accidentally dropping his wallet, and she saw his driver's license. She wrote the name down because she thought it was unusual. Cyrus Blackwood. A search for Cyrus Blackwood unearthed a terrifying pattern. He was a drifter, a self-proclaimed prophet who preyed on small, isolated communities. He'd form small, loyal followings, promise enlightenment or salvation, and then vanish, often after swindling his followers out of their money. But he had never been linked to violence or murder. Until now. The diary mentioned a specific landmark Mr. Silas used for his meditations, a cluster of 3 ancient oak trees, known as the Three Sisters, on a ridge overlooking the camp. Using satellite imagery and old forestry maps, investigators pinpointed the location, about 5 miles north of the abandoned camp. What they found, there was not a grave, but something almost more disturbing. Tucked away in a small hidden cave behind the trees, they found a site. It was a shrine. There was a baseball glove, a friendship bracelet, a Walkman, a pocket knife, personal effects, one for each of the missing children and the 2 counselors. It was a memorial created by the killer himself. And carved into the stone wall behind the altar was the same symbol Sarah had drawn in her diary, a spiral turning into a star. But the most crucial discovery was tucked into a crevice in the rock, a tattered ledger. It contained a list of names. The Whispering Pines 12 were on it. But there were other names. Dozens of them. Next to each name was a location and a year. Colorado, 2001. Oregon, 2008. Montana, 2015. It wasn't just one camp. It was a blueprint. Cyrus Blackwood, or whatever name he uses now, didn't stop in 1995. He had likely done this again and again. The Whispering Pines 12 weren't his first victims. And they weren't his last. The search for the bodies of the Whispering Pines 12 continues. But the focus has now shifted to a nationwide manhunt for a ghost. A 29-year-old mystery has been solved, only to reveal an even darker, more sprawling horror. Cyrus Blackwood is one of the FBI's most wanted fugitives. For the families, the discovery of the diary was both a blessing and a curse. They finally know what happened to their children. They weren't lost in the woods. They were led away by a monster who promised them the stars. But closure remains just out of reach. A phantom that will haunt them until Blackwood is found and the final resting place of their children is discovered. A young girl's diary, hidden for nearly 3 decades, gave a voice back to the silenced. It's a testament to a little girl's bravery and a chilling reminder that sometimes the most terrifying monsters are the ones we invite into our lives, smiling. The story of Camp Whispering Pines is not over. The search for justice and for the children continues.